What does it take to become the GOAT of Overwatch is a question a lot of people ask, something I've covered before with Violet, posing the question if he is the greatest Overwatch player of all time. Well, how can he be when we have a different player who can answer that question? Lip. He makes us peons understand what is required to reach this status. We're going to talk about his legacy today and why I feel he is the greatest Overwatch player of all time. While looking back at Lip, it was shocking to find out he actually wasn't hyped at all for his rookie year, probably because he was part of a horrible team called Blossom, the same team Ons came from, by the way. They didn't play together. It's just funny how this awful team gave us two of the most unbelievable players this game has ever seen, going into Overwatch League the same year as well. Lip joining the Shanghai Dragons in 2020 was just seen as another guy coming into the general public. If anything, Lee Jae-gon had more attention on him than Lip when it came to new players for Shanghai. Then there were other rookies in the scene like Alarm, who people focused more on. When someone is claimed to be the second coming of Jonak, of course everyone is going to turn their head and see what that's about. So basically no one really paid attention to Lip or expected anything from him. When it came to the beginning of 2020 Shanghai season, everyone was swapping playtime around. DM and Lip kept coming in and out for hitscan. Stand 1 was playing Winston over Fearless. It was just this. But the times Lip actually did play, he was on a variety of hitscan heroes, sometimes Tracer. Then of course Sombra is what got everyone's attention for a multitude of reasons. One half, his EMP generation was making people ask how. For him, it turned into a cooldown instead of an ultimate apparently. How he was pulling this off was a mystery to everyone. You can insert the worst pun of all time if you want to and say Lip looks like he's hacking with his tracking on Sombra. The EMP generation was just unfathomable. At this point, no one saw anything like it. He'd waste it, and 30 seconds later, he's 90% to another one. Which brings us into the slight issue, kind of. His EMP usage was weird. There were times he'd blatantly waste it in losing fights or use it when nobody could follow up. But you also can be that guy and say, sure, they were generated so fast it didn't really matter when EMPs were flushed down the toilet, but it can't be ignored how him doing this did make Shanghai lose fights. I'm assuming it was used in pure confidence because of how dominant this roster was. 2020 is the Shanghai turnaround year. It began off the back of finding their core roster, winning their first tournament finals for 2020 in one of the best matches of all time, May Melee Shanghai Dragons versus Seoul Dynasty, the only tournament finals that was a reverse sweep in Overwatch history to my knowledge. This is the moment viewers started to notice the impact not only Fearless, but also Lip added to the roster. In maps 1 through 3, Stand 1 was in for main tank, and DM came in to play hitscan. I will mention Lip did play in the first map that they lost, but I'm just gonna blame Stand 1 for ruining the team's mojo. Thankfully, shit turned right around when the Fearless Lip dive started. Fearless, Void, Lip, Fleta, Lee Jae-gon, and Izayaki is not something to be trifled with. Seoul learned that the hard way. Some people call this the best roster of all time for a reason. Lip only played Sombra during this series, but after May Melee, he started to move into hitscan more, where sadly for DM, Lip was just better, which is quite the ask to be considered better than him, because DM was one of the best hitscan players during this time period, which people seem to forget. I'm shocked no one really ever brings that up for Lip when talking about his rookie year. Maybe they were just focused on Ons with his aimbot cheating bullshit, but this immediately put Lip as a top tier level threat in the hitscan world. He was a rookie who had no hype behind him at all, overlooked by everyone, putting absurd Sombra performances out, and has the capability to put DM's ass on the bench. Lip showcased his hitscan talent in some important matches as well, most notably the Countdown Cup finals against Hangzhou. He absolutely clowned on this team with Widow, winning yet another stage. This dominance created the fun narrative of asking which region is better, APAC or North America. Shanghai Dragons were annihilating APAC and Shock was dominating North America alongside Philly Fusion. So going into playoffs, it was going to be an interesting time, especially with how these teams were looking. Fusion, Dragons, and Shock all played fantastic during the final stage, until we got the piss-ass Roadhog meta. If it's not Nozl playing it, or Junbin and Major 1 finals, just put me to sleep. Don't really want to watch bad design in action. But to keep my distaste for that hero aside, dragons were good at this meta, of course. Taking out Lip for DM again, not entirely sure why that choice was made. They are of course both fantastic players and shared playtime throughout the season, but Shanghai as a whole looked a lot better when Lip and also Fearless were in. At least they made it close against both Shock and Seoul Dynasty during playoffs, where Dragons not making it to Grand Finals was a disappointment, considering how good their season was. But third place is still great for a group of players that were honestly never put into a position to succeed previously, while also having two rookies. When it comes to Lip, the grander community didn't seem to understand how good he was yet. People never paid much attention to the APAC region and thought the players weren't very good for whatever reason, even though mostly all NA teams are filled with Korean players, but sure. Being a genuine consideration for Rookie of the Year and acquiring his first role star, keyword first, also winning 2 tournaments in his starting year, is more success than some players ever see. The tangible difference Lip made in the DPS line was proof enough of how good he was, not only on Sombra, but on Hitscan as well. But this successful season is only a testament of what's to come. For 2021, I don't think anyone was surprised to see nothing really change roster-wise. Once Dragons found out how good their core team was, why change it? Fearless did of course leave, but that wasn't Shanghai's choice. Fearless wanted to join Dallas Fuel, so they let him go. How nice of them, getting Fate to take his position over, where we were able to see pure domination from Shanghai once again. This is the year everyone elevated to a whole new level. After Shanghai got their annual 3-0 loss to Chengdu Hunters at the beginning, this team was just truly top tier, domestically and internationally. Throughout this season, the few times Lip played Hitscan, it truly broke out as world class to the commoners. Slowly but surely, people were able to see what this guy could do, becoming a living highlight reel with not much competition standing to him in the Hitscan department. But he didn't really need to play Hitscan too often because Sombra became meta for APAC teams once again. It started with incorporating the ball in June Joust, one of the best finals matches of all time, Dallas versus Shanghai, evolving into adding Sombra in for the Summer Showdown and Countdown Cup. And Lip versus the world on Sombra is an interesting conversation, which will of course be brought up numerous times while talking about Lip. It's impossible not to mention Sombra. I don't think there has ever been a person who can play this hero and get as much value as he does. You can't really say this for any heroes in this game at all. It's one of those extreme cases where it's like Gushwei or Fearless on Winston, just being a tier above everyone else. No one's really at that level, or maybe Jonak Zen performances in 2018. That's how Lip Sombra is. It's just unbelievable. As we said with 2020, the tangible difference on the roster when Lip plays in general, but mainly Sombra is just, I don't know. There must be some sort of intangible calling value he provides on top of Lip having some of the best tracking you could possibly find in the game. I've seen a lot of commoners say, oh, it's Sombra, so it's not that hard. If that's the case, why is Lip noticeably better than everyone else from a micro and macro standpoint? It's night and day looking at his value compared to others. There was of course good Sombras like Doha, Fitz, and Hisu from 2020, but honestly, I'd say Fitz is the only person who could compare to Lip. In 2020, some argue he was better than him because of his EMP usage being more logical rather than just throwing most of them in the trash. Even still, Lip was much better mechanically. In 2021, Lip just accelerated past Fitz and everyone else, just being in a tier of his own if he wasn't already. Saying that Lip Sombra was a large reason to why Shanghai's ball comp was so good is not really that crazy. This comp became Shanghai's bread and butter, and actually nobody could beat them at it. The other players were obviously fantastic, like Lee Jae-gon and Izayaki is one of the best backlines of all time. Fleto was coming off of his MVP season. Fate was one of the best ball players, and Void is arguably Overwatch 1's best off-tank player, but Lip Sombra was the elevating factor to put him at the point of almost winning MVP. The only options were Leave or Lip, also acquiring Role Star number 2, reaching 3 stage finals and winning 2 of them, letting Gladiators get their Michael Mouse win for Countdown Cup, since in hindsight, if Shanghai was not sandbagging, this roster would have won that tournament too. 2021 didn't have a meta change after Summer Showdown, where they just plowed through everyone, and with playoffs, they just ran all the teams over with a steamroller, so assuming Dragons would win Countdown Cup 2 is a safe bet. This was the only season aside from 2018 with NYXL where people went into playoffs knowing what team would become the champion, and in Shanghai's case, they actually won, unlike NYXL. Mostly every season just had one other team that was a real contender who people genuinely thought could take it. During 2021 playoffs, no matches were close for Shanghai, only losing 2 maps throughout the whole thing. My favorite part of this whole postseason was how happy all the players were when they finally won. You can see the excitement, the elation, hard work, and dedication pay off at this very moment. Everyone's just jumping up in joy, so happy they reached the finish line. Lip got a ring and also became Finals MVP, getting some disgusting Sombra stats against Atlanta Reign and a skin in-game because of his performances. It's only been 2 years, winning 4 tournaments, 2 Roll Stars, MVP runner-up, Finals MVP, and back-to-back #1 regular season seed. That is starting a GOAT case pretty early on in your career, and there were of course some Lip haters out there who always use the classic excuse, he's on a good team, that's why he gets success, let's see him on a weaker team. Which of course is an understandable thought process, and well, those people got their wish in 2022. Let's see Lip on a weaker team. Initially, Dragons were assumed to be the most dominant team in 2022, judging by their 2021 season, who wouldn't have them at #1 seed in power rankings. This did not go to plan though. It really seemed Shanghai's tank line struggled a lot at 5v5. Fate and Void were quite underwhelming overall. Fletta's playstyle of being more reactive didn't work for 5v5 either, since mechanical skill appeared to become king in that regard. I don't think Lee Jae-gon or Izayaki had a problem. They seemed to be just as good as they were in 2021, but there were clear struggles on this team. In the first stage, they barely won their games. Most of them were 5 maps, even against middling teams. So the question becomes, does this mean Lip individually struggled? No. He was still the same person from the previous seasons, showing a lot more of the hit scan play, most notably Sojourn. He was unreal at the hero, on a team that's not pub stomping everyone in the region, which is an important way of showing someone's impact on a roster. The excuse of saying he's only good because his team is top tier cannot be used anymore, because the rest of these players were underperforming pretty heavily aside from the backline. And of course, who are you? The guy is so good, he doesn't even need to play, and he still racks up tournament wins and rings. When it comes to Lip, when you're pulling stats off like this, I mean, come on, like he's doing more than enough for his team to perform well. Unfortunately, during Kickoff Clash and midseason, that being an international event, overall, Shanghai was not very good, but thankfully, Summer Showdown was a perfect example of dominance. Apparently, Lip is not allowed to go a season without winning a tournament. We got another taste of the Shang AI, as people called it during that stage, having Lip Sojourn and the greatest Genji in the history of Overwatch, also known as Who Are You, in a Genji meta. That's a pretty destructive damage duo. Shanghai stormed through this tournament, only losing 3 maps for the whole thing. Really close to getting a golden stage, only losing 1 map during qualifiers. I really do wish this was international so we could have seen Dallas versus Shanghai here. Both teams were just on another level at this meta. We don't need to delve into the other parts of the regular season. The most important takeaway for Lip in 2022 is that it closed the narrative that was starting to brew. 2020 and 2021 were his years of pure success. 2022 was the year of struggle and answered the question how he'd perform on a roster that's not dominating the season. Of course, people did blow the Shanghai struggling way out of proportion as usual, pretending they're 1-30, getting 3-0'd every single match. But no matter the level of struggle Lip's team was facing, it cannot stop him from winning Roll Star for a 3rd time in a row, or being an MVP candidate. I mean, sure, he wasn't going to win MVP because Proper joined Overwatch League, but him being a candidate again is pretty crazy. Shanghai's playoff run ended in a match against the Shock. This also ended the Shanghai dynasty, similar to 2021 for Shock. 2023 was going to be a different look for Dragons. The players were all going to other teams. NetEase was not going to be spending any more money on Overwatch or anything Activision related anymore because of Bob, which has since changed because thankfully Bob is gone. At this point, Lip was a very high-profile player. All the nonsensical allegations were gone, multiple years of success, being an integral, arguably most important piece to almost everything Shanghai was able to accomplish. Whether it was Hitscan or Sombra, Lip was one of the best on earth at it, but even going into a new team, his integral nature to a roster success was still not over. When the 2023 season was on the horizon, I'm positive when Lip became a player on the market for teams to bid over, everyone was throwing offers left and right. Somehow Atlanta Reign was the team who acquired Lip, being the first big move of the offseason. Then we saw Stalker, who no one knew was going to be a god tier player yet. Then Fielder and Chio joined from 2022 Dallas Fuel, where this team was immediately stuck at number 1 in power rankings from seeing the backline and Lip being a part of it. Donghak was the only real question mark. Apparently, Atlanta was trying to get Junbin, but somehow the Shock convinced him to go to their roster, so Atlanta was stuck with signing Dong, who did perform unexpectedly well, coming from a rat shit Contenders team called 615, no hype behind him at all. His Winston was great, and worked for the style of play Atlanta forced so hard, a Winston Tracer Sombra dive, which made Atlanta the team to beat. I don't think anything terrifies someone more than hearing Lip Sombra in a Sombra meta. Supposedly, Atlanta was the team that started this trend of playing Winston Sombra Tracer, and I really wonder why. This team was just unbeatable at their comp in the first half of 2023. This stage was disgusting. Houston was the only team who really competed with them, and it makes sense considering the roster they had. Lip Sombra, again, was the defining factor for his team. Similar to Dragons, him playing Sombra just does wonders. I could see someone saying previously maybe they thought how on the old Dragons roster they played around it so well with him because of the synergies they built, but this was a completely different roster and it was the exact same performances, just better than everyone else by a noticeable margin. One really interesting takeaway from Lip's 2023 year was how in North America, previously, the Sombra performances were always kind of ass outside of a select few players, but when Lip came over, miraculously, Sombra performances improved more and more across the board. Did the players and coaches just sit there watching Lip Sombra POVs and endlessly study them or something? I mean, probably. If you need Sombra in your lineup, who wouldn't do that? When you have access to the POV of the greatest Sombra of all time, it makes sense. On the back of his signature hero and everyone else being top tier, the annual Lip winning a tournament came in, creating the first of many the only person who situations for Lip. This was his 4th Overwatch League year, and he's the only person who competed for this long and won a stage every season. Not even Violet has done that. The only person who finished 3 of their seasons at number 1 seed. He became the first and only person who won Rollstar 4 times, and that being every year he competed. And he is the only person who was an MVP runner-up twice, with 3 total nominations. You could argue he deserved it both years he was runner-up as well, in 2021 and 2023. But the conversation was so close, it didn't really matter who of the two won, because they both earned it in their own ways, those 2 MVP winners Lip going against being Leave and someone. But it wouldn't be living on Earth having all the success without some misery being included, because in comes one of the saddest and most disappointing moments in Overwatch history. The 2023 playoffs for Atlanta Reign is pretty depressing. The conversation going into playoffs was either Atlanta Reign or Florida Mayhem winning, which only one of them made it to grand finals, obviously. From what I understand, the Atlanta situation boils down to internal conflicts, player pushback, and just drama fun. Donghak getting picked on every day since the year he was born in makes him become the Scarface of Atlanta Reign, and complete mental boom after Hangzhou Spark reverse swept them. In the final match against London, it honestly didn't seem like anyone was trying. Looking at the player cams, was anyone even coming? It really doesn't look like it. After all this, Donghak wins Rookie of the Year, sitting on stage saying he doesn't deserve to win it. It was just awful. He's just a 17-year-old kid, so it's kind of sad to see that. And needless to say, this is one of the largest disappointments for any team in Overwatch history. This roster placing 7th in playoffs. I mean, this team was touted to be in the conversation of winning it all alongside Florida, with Houston being in the outside conversation. Individually though, Lip had yet another great season even with that atrocious end. He was 100% put into the GOAT conversation now if you look at his tenure throughout the league. It ended with Prophet, Violet, and Lip. No one else really belongs in the talk for GOAT. These three have all done so much, so it depends on what you value, purely longevity, personal accolades, or raw championship wins. With longevity, Prophet does win that as of now. The guy was a top tier player for a long ass time, starting back in 2017. Violet has had more grand finals appearances than any other player. 4 out of the 6 seasons he was in a grand finals and won 2 of them. And Lip has the most personal accolades, 4 role stars, while also having a finals MVP. If you look at the sheer victories overall though, Lip also has the most of those too, with 7 throughout Overwatch League. Violet has 5, and his Liquipedia is starting to look like Philly Fusion Jr. with all the silver medals over there. So Lip does win that out against both Violet and Prophet in that regard, but he's also competing for his 5th year as is Violet, so there is still more to add for the Lip legacy. Going into Overwatch Champion Series, everyone knew the standard Lip was held to. There's no need to go into his hit scan play. It's world class. Still, with not really much competition, he has what? PGE, Quartz, and Merit as his rivals at Hitscan. This many years later too, and a role as hotly contested as Hitscan is pretty crazy. A really important highlight for 2024 is how we've gotten to see Lip play a lot more Tracer than previous years. He of course did it a little bit for like a point strategy on Shanghai when they wanted to do Echo Tracer, and little bits on Atlanta Rain as well. It just wasn't enough playtime to really gauge how good he was at the hero. Champion Series opened up with an Echo Tracer meta, where Lip's Tracer was great. He's not the best Tracer in the world, of course. There's plenty of people who are better. His teammate Heesong is one of them. This showed how Lip can easily flex over to Tracer when it's needed, and it's also pretty good. And of course, as the meta changed, Lip has gone from Tracer back to Hitscan, and this shows how much he adds to a team. Having 2 people in a DPS line that can play Tracer really well is important in 2024, which is why DPS lines like Stalker Proper and Lip Heesong are looked at so highly. You can play around hero pools more effectively since both players are great at Tracer, and the hero is almost always meta. There is no possibility of a leave Jinmu situation. Initially, most people had Team Falcons as the favorite Korean team. Not many people were on the WAC, now Crazy Raccoon, train from the beginning. Of course, now after they won against Team Falcons, all of a sudden people say Lip is the greatest player ever and Crazy Raccoons is the best team on earth. They knew it all along. It's always interesting how that happens. The bandwagoning has gone into full effect for the Raccoons. Watch what happens if Crazy Raccoons somehow struggle in World Cup. All these people will be gone, and the next team who wins will be the best team ever, and they knew it all along. Aside from me fucking hating bandwagoners, we got to witness the 8th victory for Lip during Major 1 in Dallas. He of course did not get the watch, Junbin got that, but Lip has been competing for 5 fucking years, and he's won something every single time. If he wins the next Major, is there even an argument for him being the GOAT anymore? I would say no. What do you think? As of now, this is the legacy of Lip. After looking through the history of both Violet and Lip so far, the two who I think are neck and neck when it comes to being labeled GOAT, it is quite difficult to come up with a decision since there are so many factors when creating a conclusion here. Prophet is the solid 3rd place to me. Sure, he's got a Grand Finals MVP from 2018, obviously a champion, which is of course the default line for being a GOAT, having a minimum of 1 ring. He made it to a 2nd Grand Finals in 2020. I don't know how anyone could forget about this. I know I never did, but that's really it for him. He got 1 stage title after 2018 and 2022 with Seoul Dynasty, and stacking this up against Violet, who's been a part of 4 grand finals, 2-time champion, winning multiple stages, or Lip winning Role Star every season, 3-time MVP nominee, and more tournament wins than anyone else, just being good for so long doesn't really compete with this. Both Violet and Lip are catching up to the 7 years Prophet has anyways. Violet is currently on his 6th, and Lip is on his 5th. It's probably impossible to convince the old heads that Prophet is not the GOAT no matter what I say. Even after everything we went through today, Custas of the world will always remember the time Prophet gave him and his team a wedgie in that Hanzo meta during 2018. For me, I don't really see Prophet Prophet in that consideration for GOAT anymore and default him to third, Lip and Violet have just done so much more. Violet is Lip's only competition, and after laying out both of their careers, I understand why people have Violet as the king, making it to 4 grand finals, and Lip has only made it to 1, which is a big downside in the Lip camp. I just feel like Lip has the personal accolades to back him up for being the GOAT. Consistent individual success. Every season he won something, every season getting a role star, always being integral to the team's good performances. Success just followed him around. Being nominated for MVP 3 times, almost winning twice. I mean, say what you want to about Sombra, but he works wonders on that hero and has done it better than anyone else ever has. On an individual level, from results and awards, I just don't think anyone has done it better, and that's what I value the most. Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below if you think Violet or Lip is the greatest player of all time. It's very hard coming to a conclusion for it, so I can't wait to see what you all have to say about this. Thank you for watching to the end. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Also check out my last video about Moth, who disappeared from the community without saying a single word, but thankfully this mystery was solved by making a 15-second Google search, but his career was stupendous and learning about it was fun, which we also did cover there as well.